Okay. Mem Zayin of a base. Everyone have it? It's the Hebrew in your Gemara. I think you had it's pretty marked, pretty good. Um, we're on where the wide lines get really wide. Right over there. Vahanachri. Right by Vahanachri. Ein mezamnin alav. It's the Hebrew, you have it? Okay. Good morning, everybody. It says Vahanachri ein mezamnin alav. We do not uh, count the Nachri for Zimun. Mars, you sent out, right? The question is, isn't it obvious you can't count the Nachri for Zimun? I mean, why would you ever think that you could count the Nachri for Zimun? It's obvious. The Mishnah does not have. Would you think you could count a Gentile for a minyan? Do I have to tell you you can't count a Gentile for a minyan? No. So what was the Mishnah? The Lamed Zayin of Beis, the Gemara is questioning the Mishnah, trying to understand the Mishnah. Why does the Mishnah tell us that? I gave you a Gemara over there. Why does the Mishnah tell us that you cannot count a non-Jewish person for a zimun? That's obvious. Oh, see, so I think you maybe you're right. You wrote the Gemara or not? I think Morris, you see, when you're able to think the lines of the Gemara, that means you're really on the right channel. That means you're thinking straight. You got it? So the Gemara, so that's the Gemara's question. And like we said yesterday, the Rambam explained that the Mishnah does not tell us anything that's obvious. That's not what we're here to tell you, what's obvious. The Mishnah is only telling you something which you might not have been obvious to you. So that's the Gemara's question. The Gemara answers as Mara said. Marsh, you want to send the group again? Because usually they respond right away, but here we go. Someone just responded. Yosef said he's getting in. Okay, they just got him in. So the Gemara answers, Beger shetaval v'lo mo. The ger that he had the shemo v'lo taval. Good morning, Yosef Atzadik. The ger, he was in the middle of the process of conversion. And what did he do? He had the Brit Milah. He had the circumcision. But he didn't, but the process is not finished until he goes to the mikveh. And he didn't go to the mikveh yet. And this is a matter of dispute. At what point that in order for him to become a Jew, does he need to have both the Brit Milah and go into the mikveh, or is one step enough? So there is a machluket of Tanoim, of great rabbis in the Gemara. If the going to the mikveh would hold back the gerut, that he's not considered a Jew. And Rabbi Yochanan teaches us, Rabbi Yochanan says here in our Gemara, that's our Mishnah is teaching us that the law follows that they need to go to the mikveh also. Meaning, you might have thought he did a Brit Milah. What is Brit? What is it? Did you go to a Brit? You go to a circumcision. A circumcision represents, I'm going into the Brit of Avraham Avinu. That's what Avraham Avinu represents. The Brit of Avraham represents a commitment. I am an Eved Hashem. It's like a signet. The commentaries explain that the circumcision is like you have some sort of stamp on you that you're saying a sign. Like you go to work, people wear a sign, an ID tag that I work for Goldman and Sachs. So this is the ID tag that you work for Hashem. So you might have thought that would be enough. That you just went ahead. You hear that, Solomon? You might have thought that if the non-Jewish person went ahead and he accepted the mitzvot, and he did the action of doing the brit of the circumcision, you might have thought that would be enough. Therefore, the Mishnah tells us that it's not enough in order to become a Jew. You also have to go dip in the mikveh. There's a very interesting Rambam. The Rambam says the following: 3 things. The Jewish people at Har Sinai, there was a 3-step process to become that Jew. Number 1, they had a Brit Milah, they had that circumcision, they had Tefillah, they went to the mikveh, and there was a korban that was brought, korbanot. The Rambam says for future generations, if a non-Jewish person wants to become Jewish, he needs to go ahead and he wants to go ahead and accept upon himself the Torah, because that's what it's about. What does it mean to be Jewish? Jewish doesn't mean just you want to be Jewish. I want to have the name Jewish. It means the Rambam says you want to be, you accept upon himself the yoke of the Torah, the mitzvos. He needs three things, the Rambam says. He needs circumcision, he needs mikveh, and he needs a korban. However, today we don't have the Beit HaMikdash, but we can't bring a korban. Therefore, he needs two of the three. He needs bread, and he needs going to the mikveh. And when the Beit HaMikdash will be rebuilt, he will bring a korban. How do you like that? So all the people who converted, they will bring a korban when the Beit HaMikdash will be rebuilt. That will complete the process. But without the korban, he's still considered a convert. Okay, let's continue in our Gemara. So that's what the Gemara teaches us. Gemara says, "Hachamayiskinon beger shamol," a convert, a person that did brit milah, but v'lo toval, he didn't go to the mikveh. The Omer of Zeram Yochanan, v'olam ein a ger. He's not considered a convert until he goes ahead and he has the circumcision and he has the mikveh, the kamod de lo toval, and as long as he didn't go to the mikveh, even though he had the brit, he did the circumcision, he went through that process, nochrihu, he still has the status of a non-Jew, and therefore he cannot count them into can't be part of that zimun. So the Gemara continues, Noshim va'avodim uktanim, women and slaves and ketanim, we say, Ein mizamnin alehem. You do not count them into the zimun. That's what the Gemara says. You can't count the women into the zimun, and we explained, what does that mean? It means if you have two men and one woman at the table, let's say there's a husband, a wife, and let's say a daughter at the table. Two men, a husband and a son and a daughter at a table. You cannot count the lady in to make it three, right? Two men and one woman doesn't do the trick. But once you have three men, then the Shulchan Aruch says that there's an obligation for the woman to answer to the zimun. Remember we mentioned that point? We said everyone should make sure that their wife or any of the other girls in your house should answer to the zimun. When there's three men, supposed to make sure, Mr. Haber, I don't know if you were here when we mentioned that, it's an obligation, it's a mitzvah, it's an obligation. There's someone's wife, they're having a meal, and there's three men at the meal, and the woman also. I mean, the three men had a zimun, and the lady did not. Right. She ate together. She had the Shabbat meal together, but she did not answer to the zimun. They got the mitzvah of zimun. She missed out the mitzvah of zimun, and she missed out on something that she was supposed to have done, fulfilled. And really, it's upon the man to encourage the wife to participate in the zimun. Sometimes the wife's in the kitchen or whatever she's involved with. The man said, "We're waiting for you. We want you to be here for the zimun." It's very important to. If you want me, I can read you the language of the Shulchan Aruch, the Yalkut Yosef, but something that people are not aware of so much. I believe it's not something that people are aware of, the responsibility of the women to answer to a zimun when there's a zimun of men. All the women that ate at a meal, that there were three men that ate together at that meal. They ate together at a meal that there were three men at, and they were part of that meal, with a Shabbat meal or whatever. You had a birthday party. I don't know. You had a dinner. We had a dinner together. The women need to answer to zimun. And so right, the men, and so do the men. There's no question the men have an obligation to answer to the right. A man, if you sat with people, you were part of a meal, you have an obligation to answer to the zimun. You can't just have them leaving. If you want to, what?
There's 3 girls and no guys, or 3 girls and 1 guy.
Right, so-
They make a zimun.
So technically, it says that 3 women. It says they have a right to make a zimun, but some people don't encourage it. One reason I saw that the Chafetz Chaim writes is that it's a special mitzvah for when you make a zimun to do it over a cup of wine. It's ideal. You don't have to, meaning when you have a zimun, you need a cup of wine when you have 3 people. The Chafetz Chaim says you don't need a cup of wine. At a wedding, we do it over a cup of wine, yeah. But you don't need a cup because of the Sheva Bracha. But you're not obligated to have a cup of wine. But the Chafetz Chaim says it's mitzvah min hamufchar. It's ideal to use a cup of wine. Since it's ideal to use a cup of wine, we don't want to have the women drinking wine. And therefore, if we're going to encourage them to make a zimun, even though they have a right to make a zimun, then we're going to might be encouraging women drinking, and that's something we want to avoid. That's one reason the Chafetz there, and he brings that also. I think the Rabbi Ovadia Yosef brings that also. So,
in as much as men are required to
men are not required to have a cup of wine. It's a nice thing. It's a very honorable thing to have. It's not something you need to do.
and then there's wine.
When you make a zimun, you have anybody. Anytime you use a cup of wine for something, you have to drink a certain amount of the wine. A certain amount, right? You might not need to drink so much of it. You know what I'm saying? And an ounce and a half, whatever. Rove revi'it. Majority of revi'it. But once you're drinking and once you're taking out a cup, and it's always recommended. Anytime the more if you're able to drink the whole cup, majority of the cup, it's always different levels of recommendations of when you do a mitzvah. So that's one reason it's given. We don't want to encourage the women to drink. I thought that was fast. To me, that was, I think, very interesting. It resonated a lot with me. What can I tell you? When I see ladies going to the bars at weddings and drinking, I'm not happy. I am not happy about it. What can I tell you? That's my personal opinion. But there's other reasons that are also given why we're not encouraging the women. But technically, if the ladies want to make a zimun on their own, they could make a zimun on their own. That's a good question. What about I don't know if a man should answer to that zimun. That's a good question. But for the ladies on their own, technically, the Shulchan Aruch says ladies have a right. If you have, let's say, the girls together, all the men are in the synagogue, and the ladies are having Suta Shlishit together. They want to make a zimun. Technically, they could make a zimun among themselves. It might not be encouraged, and maybe there's other reasons today with all the women's liberation movements and all these things. You wonder if sometimes they might start mistakenly think certain times that there might. Is there a concern that people might are they going to come to lead to do certain things that they're not able to do, and they might start. I'm not sure if that's the concern or not, but there's like you have women starting to put on tefillin. You know what I'm saying? There are women that became, which is not allowed. There's certain things people need to know what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. So everything needs to be proceeded with caution and to be discussed. But that answers your question, Solomon. Technically, there's no problem. According to the Shulchan Aruch, it would seem to, if the ladies want to make their own zimun. Okay. So now the Gemara continues. Noshim v'avodim uktanim ein mizamnin aleihem. So we said you can't make a zimun. You can't make a zimun, join the woman or the avodim and the ketanim. Now we have to explain. We're going to explain. The Gemara is going to clarify this. Morris, enough people. Everyone saw the message because it seems like Yosef HaTzadik is a big tzaddik. Yeah. Okay. So the Gemara says, Omar Rav Yossi. Rav Yossi says an amazing thing. Katan hamutal ba'arisa. A katan that's in a crib. That means he's a baby. He's a minor that has no knowledge at all. He's at an age that he does not understand anything. Mizamnin alav. He says you could count them into the zimun. How do you like that? That means, what does that mean? Now, it's very hard. Now, the obvious question would be, what is the source of zimun? The source of zimun, we brought a pasuk that says, Gadlu la Hashem iti. That's one, or another pasuk. Kishem Hashem ekra, when I call out the name of Hashem, Havu godel elokeinu. I call out the name of Hashem, so you should bring honor to Hashem by responding, right? So zimun is about three people, minimum of three people. One person calls out, and the other two respond, and we're doing this together. So how, if you have a baby in a crib, how could you count him as part of the zimun? He's not responding. He's a 6-month-old baby. So the Gemara is going to say, we're not referring to the zimun of 3. He cannot be part of the zimun of 3. Zimun of 3, you need to have people that are capable of responding. As the pasuk, as the source for zimun is the idea of one calling out, the others responding. We're talking about the zimun of 10. That in 10, we know when you have 10 people, you're able to go ahead and the zimun is elevated to adding the name Hashem. Hashem at say Nevarech lelokeinu, right? You're able to say, right? Usually say Nevarech she'achalnu mishalo. Then when you have a minyan of 10, then you say Nevarech lelokeinu she'achalnu mishalo. Correct, Solomon? So that's where that child, that baby, according to this opinion, it's not the halacha, but this opinion, halacha says, you have another holy soul in the room. There's 10 people there. Even though it's a baby, you could count that baby in as, we'll see in the Gemara. So the Gemara asks the question, how could he say, Yossi, that a child that's in a crib, you have the Mezamer Allah, you can count them into Zimun, but now we learned in the Mishnah, Noshim Avad Miktan E Mezamer Alehem. You can't count them into the zimun. So the Gemara says, "Who the Amak Rabbi Yeshua Malevi?" This opinion is going like Rabbi Yeshua Malevi. What does Rabbi Yeshua Malevi say? The Rabbi Yeshua Malevi, Afa Pisha Amru Katan Hamutal Ba'arisa. Even though they said that a minor that's in a crib, Aim Izam Ninolav, you cannot count them into being number 3. Of Osim Otos Nifla Sarah. He could be number 10. He could be number 10. That's and one of the Meiri explains, the Or Zerua explains that when you have 10 Jewish people together, there's the Shekhinah. There is the divine presence. As the pasuk says, "V'nigdashti b'sof b'nei Yisrael," I will sanctify me among the Jewish people, and we know from there that a thing of holiness needs 10. So he wants to say that that the fact that you have the 10 people there, the kid is also a person. The child is a human being. The child is a human being. The child has a holy soul. There's 10 people in the room. So you could count the child in as one of the 10. The other opinion says no, that you can't count the child in as 10. The child is so young that doesn't understand that you can't count them in. But this opinion says if Osin or so Snifla Sarah. He's a person, he's a Jew. How many people? There's 10 people. 9 adults and 1 minor. You go on a plane. You have to pay for the ticket. You have to pay for the. Maybe you have to pay half price for the child or whatever it is. It's a person, right? So therefore, therefore you got to go ahead and you can count them into the minyan according to this opinion. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Yeshua Levi, now we have another statement of Yeshua Levi. Tisha ve'eved. If you have 9 people and and then one Evet Kanani, one slave that was, he was not Jewish, and then he became a slave, then he was bought by a Jew, and he went to the mikveh, he had circumcision, he accepted upon himself the mitzvot, he's obligated in mitzvot like a woman. You could accept him to be number 10 in order to say the Shem Hashem. Meaning, you cannot count them in the same way you won't be able to count a woman to be number 3. On 2 men and 1 woman will not be able to join in for a zimun. So 2 men and 1 eved and 1 slave cannot join in to make a zimun. But if there is 9 men already now, and then there's 1 eved, and you can count the eved according to this opinion. Say you can count the Evet to be number 10. Anybody want to say anything?
It's very confusing. Why a child that is baby and not a child that is like, let's say, 12?
If you a child that's a baby, you can count the zimun. You definitely can count the child that's 12. According to this opinion in the Gemara, even a child that's a baby could count in for a zimun of 10. Right?
Okay.
A zimun of 3, everybody agrees you can't count the child who's a baby.
Okay.
We're going to see a zimun of 3, there's no question. The person has to be able to talk and understand. And we're going to see there's a question, a zimun of 3, can you count the child who was of age to be able to talk and able to understand? A 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, could you count them into zimun? We will see. A baby, the Gemara says, you cannot count the baby to the zimun of 3, but there's an opinion in the Gemara you can count the baby into the zimun of 10. He could be 9 men, 9 adults, over bar mitzvah, and 1 baby. According to this opinion in the Gemara. Yes, yes, Akiva.
So the slave is counted, right?
He is counted as the 10th man. You could count him in to be number 10. And as a result of the slave, you could say, you could go ahead and say Elokeinu. You're able to, what do you say? The slave is counted as number 10. He's not counted to be number 3. Meaning, if you have, we said a zimun requires, in order to create the zimun, you need 3 men who are of obligation of Torah, of all the obligation of Torah mitzvot. A slave is not obligated in all the mitzvot of the Torah. He's obligated in all the mitzvot that a woman is obligated in. The slave has to keep Shabbat. The slave has to go ahead and has to honor her parents, and whatever the mitzvot that a woman has. The slave can't eat not kosher. The slave, he was bought by a Jew. He went to the mikveh. He has a circumcision. He's living like a Jew. In a sense, he's taught. It's hard to know how to call him. He's like, he's Jewish in this aspect as a slave. He's considered he's obligated in mitzvahs like a woman. So a woman is Jewish. So I don't know if you want to identify him, call him Jewish, or he's a slave that's owned by a Jew who's obligated in mitzvot. So that's the status that he is. I'll tell you like this: the slave, when he becomes free, then he's obligated in all mitzvot. You see what happened? The change of that slave, as long as he's a slave, he's obligated in mitzvahs like a woman. The second, if the master frees him, then he's obligated in all 613 mitzvot. The only change will be if he's free or not free. When he becomes free, he's obligated in all 613 mitzvot. We don't have slavery. We don't have these laws of slavery anymore.
Somewhere, let's say, in Morocco, where, a servant.
But I don't think we have this type of slavery. I think it's a different type of, that those servants working for them is not a slave. It's not the slave. We'd have to look more into it, but it's not the slave that the Gemara here is talking about. Okay. Now, the Gemara continues. The Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. We just said, Tisha ve'eved mistarfin. 9 and an eved, and a slave you could join him in. Meitive, I'll ask you the following question. Ma'aseh Rabbi Eliezer. There was a story of Rabbi Eliezer. She nichnas lebeit hakneset. He entered a shul. He didn't find a minyan in the shul, and he himself, he had a slave that he had, and the slave that he had gone to the mikveh, because that's the halacha. You can't keep a slave, by the way. You can't keep a non-Jewish person in your house as a slave over a certain amount of period. There's like a window that has to go through the process of mikveh, and it could be it's a 12-month period, I think, if I recall correctly. Or else you can't stay. You can't have someone living in your house who's not Jewish and didn't go to the mikveh, didn't accept upon himself mitzvahs, and he's living in your house for more than 12 months. So I mean, it's fascinating. It's interesting. Mr. Haber, interesting or not? And you have to have someone who's that's going to be it's going to be a big influence on the house. That's what I would think. Why you can't have such a thing, but you could look into it. But he comes to shul, and he has no minyan, and he has a slave that he had, and he frees the slave because he wants the guy for the minyan. I want him for the minyan. You know, there's a great story. What was the story in Eretz Yisrael? A guy needed to say Kaddish, right? He needed to say Kaddish. Let's say at yahrzeit for his father, let's say, right? I'm giving you an example. And he comes to a place, there's no minyan. He calls the taxi service. I need 9 cars. And he got 9 taxis. And he said, come on, everyone come on in. I'll pay you for your time. 9 drivers, they're all Jewish guys from Israel. And he made a minyan. It cost him some money. It cost him money to make that minyan. He called 9 cars for their time, and he paid them for their time. He got 9 Jews, right? Easy way to get Jews if you want to go ahead and Mr. Have you like the story? So that's Morris. You hear the story. So that's what happened. So he went. Yeah, it's going to cost him some money. He wants a minyan. He frees his slave. Now he got a minyan. He doesn't have the slave anymore. Okay, it's worth it to him. It's worth that. They say in America that's the price of doing business. That's the price of you want. It's worth it to you. What? So you want to go ahead and it's worth it to me to have the minyan. That's how I'm ready. I'm ready to spend for it. People need to be willing to spend. So that's what that. Now, was he obligated to go ahead and free a slave to go make a minyan? I don't believe the halacha says you have to free a slave in order to make a minyan. But if you are someone of that caliber who appreciates minyan, so he'll do that. So the Gemara says, Shichra in. We see he needed to free his slave. Lo shichra lo. If he didn't free the slave, you can't count him in for number 10. The Gemara's understanding they needed a 10th man, and they counted him in. He freed the slave to make number 10. But you told me a slave could be counted as number 10. What's fascinating, we see from the Gemara is comparing zimun of 10 to a minyan of davening, of prayer. That if a slave could be counted in the minyan in a zimun of 10, and similarly, according to the opinion that says that a child, a baby, there's an opinion in the Gemara that says a baby could be counted to make number 10 for zimun, it would come out that baby, if you have 9 adults in a shul and a baby, you can count the baby. You have a minyan. We can pray. That's the opinion of the Gemara. Not that we hold that way, but that's the opinion of the Gemara. And therefore, the Gemara says, because I would have said maybe there's a difference between a minyan and praying in shul and having a zimun of 10. Maybe zimun of 10, the bar is a little lower than what you need to have to pray minyan of David. But the Gemara equates the two, and the Gemara says, why did he have to free a slave? He should have been able to join him in. Because the same way we said you could join the slave in as number 10 for zimun, you have to join him in for number 10 as prayer. So the Gemara answers, because you don't have the case right. He needed 2. He was missing 2 people for the minyan. So he's missing 2 people for the minyan. So what did he do? He was missing 2. Shichrachad, and he went ahead and he freed 1 slave, And as a result of freeing that slave, now he has 9 Jews that are completely obligated in mitzvos. And then he used one other slave that was available for nafik bechad. And he did use the slave as number 10. He only needed to free one slave because he was missing 2 people. And we said one slave is good to join to the minyan, but you can't have 2 slaves to join. One to join. So that's what the Gemara says. So the Gemara asked the question, Vehechi Ovid Hachi, how could he go ahead and do such a thing? How could he go ahead and do such a thing? V'amar Rabbi Yehuda kol meshacha avdo over ba'asei shenema lo'ula hebem tavodu, that there's a mitzvah that you go ahead and you have the slave, and then you keep the slave, and then you taught the slave Torah, how to keep the mitzvot, and then you keep the slave, and you're supposed to keep that slave. So if you're supposed to, how do you go ahead and free that slave? This the Gemara says. So the Gemara says, Litvar mitzvah shani. The Gemara says, Litvar mitzvah, he had a right to free the slave for dvar mitzvah, in order to go ahead and accomplish a mitzvah. So even though you should really keep the slave, but he wanted to accomplish a mitzvah. He wanted to have a minyan. So therefore, that superseded the idea of keeping the slave as a slave and supporting the slave, and being the master of the slave, and providing for the slave. The mitzvah of getting the minyan trumps that, and you have a right that gives you allowance to free the slave. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? Mitzvah ba'aveira, but it's a mitzvah that's coming out of a sin. The fact that you have a mitzvah to have a minyan, but if you're doing a sin by letting him go free, at that, so how does the end justify? How are you allowed to go ahead and free him? So the Gemara says mitzvah de rabim shiny, a mitzvah of a public mitzvah. Remember, mitzvah minyan is not a private mitzvah. It enables, if it's many people, you're enabling many people to pray with the minyan. So therefore, that goes ahead and supersedes the issue of the Aveira freeing him. So the commentators obviously asked the question. The Ramban wants to understand what did the Gemara mean to say because it's a mitzvah? Because it's a mitzvah, how does the fact that the mitzvah play the role? Why would that make a difference if the Torah says you're not allowed to do something? So the fact that there's a certain mitzvah to accomplish a mitzvah, that should not. Why should that make a difference? So let's see. Let's see. So the Ritva wants to say that this mitzvah of keeping him a slave is a mitzvah derabanan. The Ritva says the rabbinic mitzvah. In the Torah, of course, you could free him, and since it's a mitzvah derabanan, then because of the mitzvah of praying with a minyan, that's the allowance of. That's why we could go in, and the Rabbanan would say you could push aside our prohibition in order to enable this mitzvah to be accomplished. That's one way to address the allowance because of the mitzvah to accomplish the mitzvah of minyan. Okay. Now we have another beautiful statement of Shuban Levi. La'olam Yashkim Adam lebeis hakneses. By the way, we could also learn out from here, from Eskimar, the power of a mitzvah of Rabbim, the power of to help the Rabbim, to help the public, that they should be able to have Kedusha. Because when you have a minyan, that you have Kedusha, you have Kaddish, and that the power of that would supersede that prohibition of a rabbinic prohibition, at least according to that approach of the Ritva. A person should get up early to come to the synagogue in the morning. Why should it be to be from the first 10? You should be counted as from the first 10. You should be counted in the first 10 of the minyan. Because if you're part of the first 10, even if 100 people come after these 10, the first 10, because you're the first 10 and you created the Shekhinah to come, you brought the divine presence. What's unique about the first 10? We need you to make the Shekhinah to come down to the shul, right? You need 10 people for the divine presence. So therefore, if you're the one who you accomplish something. Number 11 and number 12, of course, they're adding to what's, but they're coming into a product that's already here. They're coming into a minyan. You came into the Shekhinah is already here. So therefore, the people, and he says that the people who were from the first 10, even if the 100 people come afterwards, so the Gemara says, Kibel alav schak kulam. You get the reward. Anybody who comes in within the first 10, so literally it means they're going to get the reward of everybody else. So the Gemara is going to ask, what does that mean? Why should they get the reward of everybody else? The other people should also get rewards for coming. Do you think they're gonna get the reward that of everybody else, and everyone else who comes is not going to get the reward? They're going to get the reward equal to everybody else. What does that sound like it means? That sounds like it means that anybody who comes from the first 10 of the minyan, so that means everybody else who comes after 10, you are going to get the equal, you're going to get whatever schar they're going to get, whatever reward they're going to get, you're going to get an equal amount to whatever they're going to get. So let's say there's 100 people come afterwards, so you're going to get the reward for 100, as if the amount of those 100 people, you're going to get equal amount of reward to those 100 people. Let's say if the 100 people get, if you total all the 100 people's reward together, you will also get the same amount of reward equaling to those 100 people's reward. So, and the way the Maharsha says, that the more people that come, your reward is greater. Now, so what does it come out to be? Let's say if we'll put it in dollars and cents, if we'll say, it sounds like from here that let's say, if we'll say every person who comes is $1,000, every person after 10 is $1,000. So if 100 people come after 10 people, that's $100,000, and you're from the first 10, so each person gets 100. You get equal to those 100 people. That means you get $100,000. Each person will get $100,000. If 200 people come, then each person gets $200,000, because you were the one who gave that other person who brought the Shekhinah, you brought it for the other guy, and therefore you're going to go ahead and, so to speak, have a similar reward to, you're going to get the same amount of reward that he's going to get as well. So that's a big thing. Somebody asked me, called me up yesterday about a question about having a brit. What time of the day having a brit? It's, the halacha said always try to have it as earlier in the morning, the better. Not to have it. There's reason makdim mitzvos. Early is better. So here also I'm saying the idea of being from the first 10. being early, being Zrisa Makdim Mitzvot, and you're the one who's bringing the Shekhinah. You have to remember it's a great thing. So I don't know if people are so kind of focused on this. So but recognizing that I want to be from the first 10. They know it to be from the first 10, but I don't know, and not everybody. I mean, there should be a nice. Am I from the first 10? I want to make sure I'm the first 10. Maybe. Right. So if I use what you just said, Mr. Haber, a holy time of the year. So imagine, number one, the minyan is most probably the largest of the year, and the holiest of the year is the high holidays. So if you're from the first 10 during the Yomim Noraim, during those high holidays, and you're going to get the reward equal to all the reward of everybody else after 10 that came to that minyan. What do you say? It's a big incentive because the reward that they're going to get is tremendous. People spend the whole day. Imagine, person spends Yom Kippur, the whole day you come to synagogue, you're spending hours and hours in the synagogue. But if you're from that first 10, you're going to get equal reward to all those people. So that's an amazing, I think it's an amazing incentive to be from the first 10 on Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, and also anytime you're at a big minyan. Because remember, the Maharsha says the more people that come, you get more on the deal. So therefore, you get the reward equal to all the people that come. So that should be a big incentive to go ahead and come to if you go to a big minyan, I want to be from the first 10 of that. That's more challenging for me from the first 10 of a big minyan because there's more people there. But that would be tremendous, a great idea. I think we have a good tip. It's a great tip to tell.
The question, Rabbi, also
even greater, maybe. Yes. But the first 10, we're not focusing on the first 10. We're going to reward of everybody else, equal the reward of everybody else. Yes.
the question is like, where is the border line that you say the first 10? Let's say we called minyan at 7 o'clock. Now, there is, let's say, normally on this minyan coming 20 or 30 people. Now, the first 10 will get the most zechut, let's call it, okay?
Right.
But, if there is more than 10 that want to get the zechut, they start coming now 6:30. And maybe even some people will come at 6 o'clock. So where is the border line to say like, the first 10, is the first 10 before the starting and ready to be praying, or the first 10 that's showing up can cause also competition, in a way.
I think it's a good competition. Let's have this competition. I think, but I it's a good point what you say. I presume the first 10 that are coming they're here in the synagogue. They're ready to pray. They're coming to pray. They're here to pray. So even if I would think that they're coming to pray. We're here to that should be bring the Shekhinah, because they brought the Shekhinah, those 10. But it's a good question, Yosef. Let's say if they come before davening and they're learning before davening, but they're not praying yet. How would you count that? Something to think about. Let's think about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Have a great day, everybody.